Hey, everybody, and welcome to Badge Banter, where we feature some incredible stories about the value of the ID badge and its ability to enable organizations to better recognize and connect people. Always love to connect with some of our industry favorites. I'm your host, Lindsay Martin-Nez, but today one of our industry guests is Vinny Peone, Director of Marketing for Eastern Security Services and Intellitech Security Services. Vinny, super glad to have you here today.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we are going to have some fun today, I'm pretty sure. If you guys don't know Vinny yet, you are really missing out on some pretty epic industry marketing. But before we kind of dive into our discussion topics for today, Vinny, can you tell us a little bit about you and the organizations that you work for?
So, as you mentioned, I'm Vinny Peone. I'm the Director of Marketing for Eastern Security and Intellitech Security Services. Eastern Security is based out of upstate New York. We cover all of upstate from Buffalo to Albany across the southern tier. Intellitech Security is based out of New York City, Long Island, and Florida. Between the two companies, they've been in business over 75 years. We've got employees who've been with us for 40 of them, two family-owned sister companies as well. So family-owned, local presence in all the areas we serve. I've been here for going on 4 years this year. I actually started as an installation technician, then started dabbling in our social media just for fun, and eventually became our Director of Marketing after winning our first Sammy Award.
Very cool. And you just won 2 more Sammys at
We did.
ISUS, right?
Eastern brought home another one, and Intellitech brought home their first Sammy Award in company history. Eastern for Best Promotional Giveaway Item for the branded Yeti Tundra 45 cooler we gave away. And then Intellitech won one of the big 3, the Integrated Installation of the Year, which I was not part of that installation. Just to be clear, we owe that one all to the team, but I cataloged everything, did the write-up for it. So it was awesome just to be involved in, any aspect of that, the incredible work they did.
Very cool, and congrats. That's an awesome honor. You mentioned while you were talking that Eastern Security Services is based out of Western New York. And as you know, I grew up in Buffalo, New York. So surprise question for you, Vinny, that I didn't prepare you for today. Are you a Duff's guy or an Inkerbar guy?
Ooh. So that's a debate as old as time right here. And I'm going to be completely honest. Until recently, I would have said between the two of them, it's Duff's. But as I've been going back recently, and I was there, a month ago to our Buffalo office, and there is a Wingnuts near the Buffalo airport. And for anyone who hasn't had Wingnuts, if you're in the Buffalo area, you absolutely have to stop by there. I'd only ever had their wings at one of the tailgates. Phenomenal wings, perfect crisp on the outside. That would be my top pick right now in Buffalo. But I'm always willing to try others that I haven't yet for any other wing providers in Buffalo. But between the two, I'd say Duff's for nostalgia for me. That's the one I always got back during college.
All right, Duff's is my favorite too. So you passed the test. You can continue on. But I'm going to Buffalo in September for the first time in a long time, and I'm going to have to try Wingnuts now that you've hyped it up so much.
Absolutely have to. It's phenomenal.
All right, so let's switch back to security industry and not so much chicken wings. But when you look at the security industry as a whole, what is something that you think that we could really do better from a branding and marketing perspective?
Oof. Well, that's twofold, because for manufacturers, I think what they need to focus on is creating more effective advertising directly to the end user. And of course, everything manufacturers do is for the end user, but the problem is they give it to their dealers, expecting that they will pass that on to the end user, whether on social media, whether it's giving them trifolds. Problem is, dealers are busy. They're out, they're installing the alarms, they're selling them. Most of the time it's a small operation. Their salesperson is their own project manager and account manager, and they typically, a lot of this marketing collateral doesn't see the light of day. And that's one problem with it. The other problem is that when they're designing marketing collateral for every integrator out there, it's very bland. It's usually the same stock photos from Adobe, the same stock photos they've created in-house. So there's no character, there's no personality to it. It says nothing about that integrator who's supposed to be the one giving it to their end users. So it's ineffective. And in an industry where everything comes down to trust, it's security, people, the end users, they want to know who's behind the product. They want to know who's behind this trifold they're getting. And half the time they're not getting it anyway. So that's a big one for manufacturers. For dealers, again, they're too busy to market. So a lot of times, you're lucky if they have social media. You're lucky if they have a website. I see this all the time, where it's a company who's been in business 20, 30 years, and they haven't gotten a website yet. And that was fine 20 years ago. But now when 92% of consumers report making a purchasing decision based on Google reviews or Yelp reviews, they are going online. And if they can't find you, they're going to go with the national company. And it's that simple. So I would say there's a twofold problem with it. Big areas for improvement. Manufacturers need to start marketing directly to end users. Dealers need to kind of take the reins on their own marketing, whether it's working with a third party, who comes in and understands security and understands their business and their challenges, or, attempting to do it themselves.
Okay, I like what you're talking about. I'm going to dig a little deeper on this. So when you were talking about like collateral pieces and things that manufacturers create, you're not wrong. Like you get those maybe in the hands of your integrator and then they land there, or they're in like some marketing closet, or just not even a closet, somewhere in the office. So what types of marketing, if we feel like collateral pieces aren't necessarily effective, what types of marketing would you suggest resonate the best or would be the most useful to?
I wouldn't waste a dime on print. I'll tell you that for sure. Anything they should be sending should be digital. If the dealer wants to print it themselves, they're absolutely more than welcome to. And, if they got a good relationship, they can offer to do it, but they shouldn't be printing stockpiles of collateral, to supply to dealers, for the 1 or 2 times a year they visit. It's a waste of, paper for one. It's a waste of their time and energy for it to not go anywhere. What they should be focusing on, and I'm going to give a shout out to DMP on this one actually, because they've got, and a lot of manufacturers have tech support videos. What DMP did for Intellitech that was pretty cool is I reached out to them. I asked if they could brand their tech support videos so I could put them on the Intellitech YouTube channel, our website. Not only did they do this for me, they had it back to me within 1 week of the request, and this was 60 videos they had on there. And again, anyone who watches these videos in our industry, they're going to look at it and they're going to, oh yeah, these are DMP videos. But for me to be able to give that to one of our end users at Intellitech, be like, hey, these are the tech support videos that we have. It means so much more to have the Intellitech name on there, to have your own dealer's name on it. And it's a huge time saver. These videos would have taken me, weeks to do everything to the same quality that they did. So that's what they should be doing. Shoot helpful tech support videos that you have anyway that you can send right to end users, but then that are also do it in a way that's scalable where you can quickly brand them for an integrator if need be. That's worth gold. I would focus on any, co-brandable digital collateral, and that's it. But then the bulk of them, take the money that you're saving from the printing and all these other things and put those towards doing, like Apple or GM grade advertisements directly to consumers. A big one that we work with at Eastern Security is Alarm.com. Mm-hmm. Our end users, they don't hear about Alarm.com until we bring it to them, which is fine. They're not security professionals. I wouldn't expect them to. But with a company that size who's coming up, the technology they are, I absolutely do think that their name should be fresh in an end user's head to the same scale of, some of these DIY systems. So,
I get what you're saying. It's hard. I can see it from both perspectives, but those are great ideas. And I love the co-branded concept and approach to it because, a real partnership between a manufacturer and a systems integrator that's there locally involves both names and both parties, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
All right, so you touched a little bit on social media, which I would argue that the security industry as a whole does not do very much of. But anyone who follows you already knows that you're very active on social media, both you personally and for the companies that you work for. So what's your go-to strategy for creating engaging social media content?
So we obviously, even though I work for 2 companies, I'm based out of Syracuse. And at one point, I was in the field every day as a technician, and then I gradually started to come out of the field. So I'm typically based out of the office, and I still try to get out into the field with the guys. But I always, I try to catalog any of the jobs we do when possible. I try to get our technicians in the field. I try to get the equipment they've installed. And honestly, a lot of times it is that simple. A picture of your product in the field. If you've got your logo on the product, even better. If you work with a distributor, that's able to brand your products for you, that's huge. I love being able to have a card reader out there that's, as much as I love Alarm.com, I want it to look like an Eastern Security Services reader. And I think that's huge, just taking pictures of those, taking videos of your technicians working, but more importantly than that, getting videos or photos of your end users using them. And again, not everybody's going to agree to that. There's a lot of people, a lot of clients who are not going to want the world knowing, what they use for security. But other ones, when it doesn't show too much of the property, when it's limited to just them, maybe just them, standing by the technician and, going through a training together. Like sometimes it could be that simple, and that's the stuff that resonates with other people, being able to see real people, using your solution, using your company for something. And that's always the priority. So for me, being based out of this office, anytime that I hear that there's a training going on or an installation on a certain product going on, I'll try to insert myself, when possible, so that I can be involved with it. Maybe I do the follow up. Those things are gold. That's a big thing we do. And then honestly, I work with a funny group of people, and every now and then somebody just has a funny idea. They're like, hey, should we make content with this? And since we've been doing this for as long as we have, everybody always has funny ideas. He did one a couple months ago where it was, I can't remember what the caption was on it, but it was like, what a career in the security industry can do for you. And we shot everybody in the office here with an age filter. So it'd be them slowly transitioning into their older selves. And, the reach on that was crazy. Even on LinkedIn, where you typically don't see, a ton of views, not like you would on, Instagram or TikTok. And we had over, 100, likes on it. We had a ton of engagement, a ton of impressions. It showed up in a lot of feeds. And we have funny ideas and we execute them. And they're not all winners. And sometimes we shoot them and we don't like them, by the time we do all the editing and everything, we scrap them. But I would say that the big strategy is just kind of to, it's probably 50-50, our products and our people.
I like that. And I personally, I've made a case often and had many conversations about how marketing in the security industry is boring. And it's a lot of stock photos and a lot of the same people on ladders. And I love what you're talking about having your people in it. We try to do the same thing here at Badge Pass and bring a certain element of our team into everything that we do. I will say that some people are not as positive or high energy about the fun aspect of marketing in the security industry. And there's kind of this notion of like, oh, well, this whole industry is based around like trust and security. And if we're focused on security, but we're having fun, does that send like a conflicting message to the end user? And so how do you like toe that line, if you will, between like what's fun and too much fun?
Also, I don't know why anyone ever said security can't be fun or security professional.
I didn't say it. That's for sure.
No, and that's the thing. You're basically citing the entire history of security marketing right there, which has always been very buttoned up, very polished, very conservative. And unfortunately, that marketing strategy is just not going to work. It really doesn't work for our current generation, let alone the next ones that are coming. And we're talking about like the TikTok, the Reels generation here. They don't want to see, quiet professionals. They need to see them at all to believe it. Otherwise, they're just going to go with the ones they are seeing, which is the national brands. But they're the ones who, it has to be something engaging, whether it's funny, it's impactful. And I'm not saying that you need to go out and, shoot fireworks off of your head and, jump through a flaming ring or anything like that to go viral. But they need to be able to see, this generation in particular needs to see who they're doing business with, and they have to see you and trust you and, believe that your product is the best for them. It's not going to be as simple as just, resharing something from a manufacturer. And again, everything we do, sometimes we do ones where we're like, okay, we think this is funny, and this is probably not, appropriate. And, that's why we always do, Cooper and I, who's the president of Eastern, we always look at everything. We're kind of the review process. And if we're both on the fence with it, we'll bring in other managers as well. Hey, what do they think about it? Like our project manager, for example, Kyle Robbins, he is much more conservative than we are with these things. So sometimes we'll get his opinion on it and he'll be the decision maker. Again, if we're really not sure and we're both on the fence with things, like anything on social media, there's a fine line between what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. And you always want to think about your most conservative, client that you have, and think about what would they say if they saw this, and, always keep them in mind and think about, who you'd be worried about losing, their business if they were to see the ad you're putting out there. And again, I think for most people, especially who grew up, on social media, on computers, they've got the common sense to think about that first. Mm-hmm. I would say for anybody who's thinking about sparking up their social media presence, do some research. Go on LinkedIn, go on Facebook, see some of the companies who are doing it. Kind of compare what they have for maybe online reviews, what they're doing on Facebook as well. See how what their actual customers say about them to make sure they are doing a good job. And then kind of base it off of what they're doing, but so slowly start to bring in your own uniqueness to it anyway.
No, I like that. I think that's a good idea. I loved the point you made about how people just want to connect with the people they're doing business with. Last year, I wrote a book called Badge Passion, and a bunch of people were like, why would you spend the time writing this book? And I said, I feel like it's hard sometimes to understand the people behind the company, or you have a preconceived notion about like what a company's about. And I know that like once people get to know Batch Pass, they're like, man, those people are super fun. And like, I wish I had been working with them sooner, and not just fun, but confident, and the products are great and all this stuff. And I think that you're doing something very similar with the marketing that you're doing and trying to help people feel like they can understand what y'all are like outside of just, hey, we're a security company.
Absolutely. People, I mean, it's a fact. People do business with people that they trust and like, typically. If they've got a choice between other ones, if it's, you and another company and they don't like the other one or they don't know the other one, it's an obvious choice there. And there's a value to that too. And I think, for depending on the person, depending on the situation, most people would probably pay more money to do business with the person they like more and they trust more.
Yep.
And again, I don't have any data right in front of me to back that claim up, but that's always been the case to me. I've worked sales for a number of industries, and I didn't always have the best deal in front of people, but I always, think I outshine anybody who I was up against with another dealership or another firm.
Well, we have to talk about badges a little bit because like that's kind of the point of this whole series. So we're going to tie them in from a marketing perspective, and I'm going to ask your opinion. So I am very opinionated on this topic, of course, but there's been this like mobile credential versus physical badge debate that's been kind of like simmering in the security industry for a little while. No, you haven't heard it. I think people have talked about it once or twice. But part of me thinks that sometimes like the debate itself is suffering because there's like a little bit of a mini branding crisis or like brand positioning crisis around either side of the argument, honestly. Would you agree with that at all? And do you think that like better brand positioning would help the messaging around either solution or the hybrid solution of both?
I mean, the hybrid solution typically in security seems to work best. Like anything, there's no one size fits all in security. I absolutely agree that, more than most other industries. But look, I mean, mobile credentials are gaining in popularity in a lot of places. There's a lot of companies that are coming out that, are mobile first. And really that's it. I mean, you could put credentials on there, but they are designed to be more mobile friendly. Mm-hmm. But you also have facilities who are never going to do away with photo ID and badges. You take schools, a lot of hospitals, a lot of government facilities are always going to have a physical badge. And that doesn't necessarily have to be tied to their access control. They just have to have on them a physical identifier of who they are, what their role is. Maybe it's one that's got, the company name insignia on it. And I think like any other manufacturer, both sides of the debate, kind of lose a little bit on the marketing because, again, they're giving marketing collateral to dealers who aren't passing it on to end users. And, one thing right now with mobile, there's a lot of takeovers we do. A lot of clients don't even know that you can have a credential on your phone. And again, that is one of the big downfalls is because, companies like, HID, just to give an example here, because, with the mobile evangelist, a lot of they're marketing to, dealers. They're marketing to integrators. And a lot of end users don't end up actually seeing this, their efforts, because the dealers aren't passing it on to them. And I think, obviously they go through and they talk to facilities and stuff like that as well. But most, people, I think, still don't know that you can have a credential on your phone. And I think a lot of times the marketing is just not very end user based from a lot of companies. And really, the same way with, with badges as well. Like a lot of times people come to us when they ask about like, oh, hey, could you guys, help us with badge printing? Because they've got a 20-year-old badge printer there. Yeah, they got it to blow the dust off of that, works maybe half the time. And I think there's a lot of value to them if instead of them, leaving this, just in the hands of their integrator, if they knew a Badge Pass, they could be like, hey, we heard of this awesome company, Badge Pass. Do you guys work with them? Yeah, I think there's a lot of value there. And so again, falling on my previous point, I think marketing should be designed, specifically for end users.
No, I love that. I think you're right. I think that the problem is I can see it from both sides because you talk about HID and mobile credentials or whatever, but I mean I think they've built like a fairly enormous team specifically to position mobile credentials in the marketplace. But when you think about how many millions of end users there are, like it needs to be a joint effort, because there's really no way for even someone as big as HID to get in front of every end user. Like, they need their integrator partners. And the same message rings true.
What works really well, though, they are, I mean, like Phil Coppola, who I had mentioned earlier there, I mean, like, he's designing marketing, marketing collateral, but I mean, like web content on, social media.
Sure.
That realistically, I mean, is appealing to end users. He's turning, memes into marketing on there, which, with the generation now, and even with, where I'm at, that's the stuff that's going to stand out to me more than a stock photo of, a paid actor holding a phone up to, a card reader that doesn't even exist because it's AI generated. And that's the kind of stuff that does really well. And, obviously he's very prominent online because it's obviously working and stuff like that, and stuff that like what you do. And, you guys, showing your company culture all the time on social media, I think that's invaluable compared to traditional security marketing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I like it too. So obviously this is how you and I found each other and found synergy in what our businesses are doing. So to kind of wrap us up and wrap up our deep conversation today, what's one piece of advice that you wish someone would have given you earlier in your career?
I think it would be to not give up so quickly. I started in the security industry in 2015, which was when I was basically fresh out of college as a personal trainer, and it was a complete 180 for me. I went into a sales role, and I was definitely not ready for it at that point. If I'd stuck with it, I would have had an invaluable extra number of years in the industry versus being out of it for 6 years, and like the Hotel California, you always end up coming back.
Yeah.
I think just in general, just stick with it when you're going through adversity, not to give up too quickly, and to really think long term on things. And a lot of people, especially a lot of millennials, they're afraid of confrontation. And I don't think that's an unfair statement. That's most people I know are afraid of confrontation in some way. They're afraid of having tough conversations. And when it comes down to it, it's easier to leave. And I think a lot of people miss out on really good career opportunities by giving up too quickly. And it goes in with everything, not just career-wise, but if you're in the middle of a project that's kicking your butt, or you've got an idea, or you want to kick off a new creative campaign, just don't give up. There's so many people in our industry for support, so many other second opinions you can get. I would say when you're going through hard times, keep going.
I love that. I think that's great advice. You're so wise, and also you made me feel really old when you were talking about your first year in the industry. So. Anyway, all great points. You've shared a lot of great insight with everybody today, but now we're going to come to my favorite segment of season 2 of Badge Banter. So we just added a new segment called Badge Blitz. And basically what I'm going to do is for 60 seconds, I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions. The goal is for you to just give me your gut reactions. Like, don't overthink this. You don't have a lot of time. And answer in ideally 1 sentence or less. Do you feel like you can handle this challenge?
Yeah, let's give it a shot here.
Okay. You should note that I did not prepare you for these questions in advance, and none of them are related to chicken wings, as we've already covered that.
Oh, darn it.
We've already covered that very important topic today. All right. Yep. Are we ready? We got a timer?
Yeah.
We're ready for 1 minute. Okay. Go. If your life had a soundtrack, what would be the first song on the list?
Oh, gosh. Till I Collapse, Eminem.
What marketing buzzword or trend do you wish would disappear?
Synergy.
Same question, but for the security industry, what industry buzzword do you wish would disappear?
Oh, I love AI, but it's overused.
I like it. All right, if LinkedIn had a cringe reaction, what kind of posts would you use it on?
Anything that starts with what I've learned about B2B sales from blank, fill in the blank.
From something totally unrelated to B2B.
Exactly.
How long do you think you would survive in a zombie apocalypse?
I'd be the last guy left.
Forever. You'd survive forever.
Yep.
Okay. If your personal brand had a warning label, what would it say?
Shoot. Warning. No, you might be offended. I don't know. You might not like these memes.
Warning, you might be offended. Perfect timing. In exactly a minute. Just so we're clear, in a zombie apocalypse, I'm pretty sure I would be gone on day 1.
You think so?
Yeah, I don't think I'm cut out for it. My husband maybe. So it depends if we're together when the zombie apocalypse begins. He has more survival skills than me, for sure.
I may have been boasting a little bit, being as I just ran my first ever, my first 5K since 2009, and it took me, I think 32 was my finishing time. So I'm definitely have not been following rule number 1, which, as everybody knows, is cardio. So I think once I brush up on that a little bit, I think I'd be in the top 15, 20%.
I like it. You're very confident. I hope that we never have to answer that question for real, but
Me
I
too.
appreciate it.
I'm terrified of zombies, so I agree.
Well, thank you so much for all the fun banter today and all of your insight. It's fun to talk not just about the security industry, but also about a different kind of approach to it and more on the marketing side. I don't typically have guests that come from that side of the space. And so I really appreciate you joining me for a few minutes and sharing all of your ideas and thoughts on how we can do better.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. It was so much fun, Vinny. And for everybody else, we hope you'll join us next time as we take you beyond the badge.